Hi, everyone. Welcome to another one of OfferFit's virtual series. Today's guest is Jim Lecinski. Jim is a marketing educator and advisor and co-author of the AI Marketing Canvas. His focus is marketing strategy and digital transformation. He has over 30 years of experience driving successful business results for major brands by developing and implementing integrated omni-channel and digital marketing programs. He was VP of Customer Solutions for the Americas at Google and is now a clinical associate professor of marketing at Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management. So today, Jim's kindly offered to talk to us about capturing the power of AI in marketing and the AI Marketing Canvas. So Jim, I'd love to hand it over to you to walk us through this.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Sabrina. It's a pleasure to be with you and to be part of this wonderful OfferFit virtual series. Thanks for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to share a little bit of the thinking from our AI Marketing Canvas project. And so with that, let's go ahead and jump right in with our hypothesis here. Our hypothesis is that there is an untapped opportunity to use AI and machine learning in marketing, and we'll unpack a little bit about what we mean by AI versus machine learning, but there's an untapped opportunity to use that in marketing to drive growth and therefore gain a competitive advantage for your business and for your brand, and maybe a little bit for yourself too, thinking about personal professional development. And the thoughts that I'm going to share with you are out of the AI Marketing Canvas project that Sabrina teed up. I should credit my co-author and partner here, Dr. Raj Venkatesan from the Darden School of Business at the University of Virginia. Dr. Raj and I spent about the last year and a half thinking about this exact issue of how AI and machine learning can be applied to marketing. And while Dr. Raj is a data scientist, I am not. That makes us a good team. Our approach here was not to approach this in sort of a software engineer coding, technical first kind of a way, but rather to serve this up in a way that makes sense to marketers in the language that marketers use, solving problems and addressing opportunities that marketers think about all day long. So we're going to focus more of our talk today, and the book is more focused on using AI to drive top-line growth, revenue, and profit, though we should note that it can also be and is widely used on a cost reduction or cost saving, more of an efficiency side of things. But again, our focus is going to be on driving growth here. And some of the original thinking of the book that you see here on the right was originally published as a journal article in the University of California, Berkeley Cal Management Review. For those of you interested in that, you send me a LinkedIn and I can get you a copy of that as well. But anyway, maybe a place to start, as I mentioned, is just a little bit of a definitional level set as to, what do we mean by artificial intelligence? This is, of course, one of these kind of hot business buzzwords today that's getting lots of attention, but it also maybe has some fuzzy meanings or different meanings to different folks, or maybe some folks who pretend like they know what it means, but maybe kind of don't. Words like engagement or blockchain, right? Or viral content. All words like that I think would benefit from a little bit tighter unpacking. And so to help us understand what that means, I'm going to wind back the clock to maybe surprise you and say it's actually, maybe it's new to us, maybe it's new to you. It's not new to the world. Many folks sort of date the origin of artificial intelligence back to the great Alan Turing. You may remember him from the Bletchley Park Codebreakers in the Second World War. But shortly thereafter, in 1950, he wrote this seminal article called Computing Machinery and Intelligence, in which right off the bat there, you see it in the bottom right, I underline it for you, he proposes the question, can machines think? And that sort of was the prime mover domino that set all of this kind of discussion in place. Several years thereafter, in 1956, a number of the leading computer scientists around the world convened at a conference at Dartmouth University in New Hampshire, led by the great John McCarthy, who went on to be known as the father of AI. He would go on to do great things at both MIT and Stanford. But the purpose of that convention of leading thinkers at the time was to, yes, start to answer Turing's question, but also at the same time to arrive at a common definition. Definitions in the social and hard sciences are a wonderful thing because once we have a common definition, now we can set about trying to tackle tough problems. And so the definition that they agreed on was we call something artificial intelligence if it's a system that performs actions which, if performed by humans, we would consider those actions to be intelligent. And what's interesting about this is if your friend, your neighbor, your cousin who is a hardcore computer scientist says, hey, I heard you watched a webinar about AI. What do you think AI is? If you use this definition today, you'd still get a little bit of street cred and respect out of it. It actually still holds some, whatever we're at 75 years later. But what's interesting was, even though it started in the late 50s there with this conference, it continued to gain momentum slowly but surely. AI did, for the next couple of decades, reaching an initial peak of interest up here in the 1980s. And that was the sort of the mainframe era, right? You think about Cray and Sperry and IBM, kind of big processing power enabled the machines to kind of tackle tough problems with large data sets. But then it went into something of a 30-year, 35-year hibernation. We call this an AI winter. Oh, by the way, credit to the great Ben Evans in his latest presentation for pulling out some data from Google's Ngram data set to sort of show there was the first peak. And then you see interest waned very much so all the way up until, 2010, 2015 or so, where you see interest now in recent years start to reemerge in this topic. And that may be where many of you have first heard about it or first sort of picked up or joined the interest in AI. But what led to the initial peak, the trough, and now the reinterest are really kind of three things. The first is, as we'll see, to do artificial intelligence, to have machines think or act in human-like ways with these advanced systems requires a ton of data. And so, no surprise to all of us is that there's been an explosion of data. 90% of all the data generated in the world was generated in the last 2 years. So check, now we've got data. It has to be economically viable to process and store that data. So check, check. We now see in the chart in the middle, precipitous drive in the hard drive cost per gigabyte. At Google, we used to call that approaching de minimis. And the third is compute costs, of course, falling as we've got advanced chipsets that allow us to, now go from processing in the kind of $200 range now down to pennies, near de minimis as well. And so as those three things in the last kind of couple of years have emerged, it allows us now to get back re-engaged, thinking about all the possibilities of AI and machine learning. And this is probably a good time for us to now kind of unpack or disambiguate those things. And so, this is kind of a common graphic you may have seen before on the right, but it bears repeating. We like to think of artificial intelligence as sort of the big tent, the heading, the main subject area, like chemistry or marketing. And underneath chemistry, there's biochemistry and all kinds of other chemistries. Underneath marketing, there's digital marketing and content marketing and search marketing. Well, underneath artificial intelligence, these sort of programs or systems that have the ability to act in a human-like way, what we really want to focus on as marketers is the subset underneath that we call machine learning. And here's a definition that I really like. Machine learning is sort of a branch or subset of artificial intelligence that uses examples. Computer scientists will refer to these examples as training data. Could be images, text, numbers, sounds. But we feed these training data to advanced machines, and they, on their own, try to identify patterns among the training data, and then make future predictions, in a way, forward thinking. And then we humans sort of score those predictions, whether they were accurate or right or wrong, or how good they were. And then the next cycle through, the machine learns, and those predictions become better and better with more revs and more cycles. And that's why it's called machine learning, constantly improving over time. But what's notable for marketers about this, and many of us marketers, not being computer scientists, may have only had a basic programming course in high school or in university, we think about machine programming language as a series of explicit if-then statements. You have to tell the machine, if a condition exists, if this column adds up to 10, then do that. If it adds up to less than 10, then do something else. Well, that's not how this works, right? Here, rather than the programmer being omniscient and telling the machine what to do in every possible iteration or circumstance, we say, here's an outcome we would like. Here, this is what a good customer looks like. This is what a customer likely to stay or likely to leave or attrit looks like. Here's a bunch of training data about our customers. Please make a prediction as to whether, if I show you a new customer, it looks like that's somebody likely to be high value or not, likely to stay or not, likely to respond to a certain type of marketing message or marketing solicitation or not. And a little beyond our scope today, but certainly the OfferFit folks can talk to you about some of the methods by which the machines do that. Supervised learning, unsupervised learning, of course, the great reinforcement learning techniques on the A/B testing that OfferFit uses is certainly a machine learning method that we as marketers are benefiting from a great deal. But that's really what we want to focus on, is this sort of notion of, if I could provide as a marketer the machine with some training data of some significant scope and scale, could the machine make some pretty advanced, high fidelity, accurate predictions for me to help me unlock more value in my business than if I was hand predicting or maybe just shooting from the hip myself as a marketer? Okay. My old boss, Eric Schmidt, was on to this topic when he was chairman of Google way back in 2017, when he famously said at the Cloud Next conference that he believes, and he was right, the future of your business is this combination of training data, big data, and machine learning applied to the business opportunities and customer challenges in front of you. And so why we care about this as marketers is because, if you think about it, that's what we do. Marketing is all about making great predictions to deliver the right, best personalized experience for our customers, whether they're B2B or B2C, right? We think about what's the right product, the right offer, the right time, the right place, the right message, or the combination of all of those things in order to drive incremental value for your brand and for the customer engaging with you in their customer experience. I love this quote from Carl Worth. He says, to that point, a good or great personalized experience occurs when a company, when a brand, not generally, not once in a while, but in every critical moment of truth, understands what you as an individual person needs and wants, and then immediately can decide and deliver what's the best right experience from you and respond in real time with relevance. That's sort of like what we're all trying to do as marketers. Right time, right product, right place, right offer, right person, right price, etc. That delights the customers, and that would grow our brand franchises. In fact, what I'm talking about here is sort of the natural evolution in the long-term 75-year arc of the art and science of marketing, right? We all sort of started out back in the Mad Men days, like one message to all, mass marketing. And then sort of the catalogers came along and said, well, maybe I could create some kind of personae, 2, 3, 4 target audiences, and have some custom versions of the catalog or custom messages for each of those couple of personae. And then from there, digital marketing unlocked our ability to do that a little bit on steroids, and instead of maybe a dozen personae, to have hundreds of tailored messages. But again, all with if-then rules, right? If you live in this zip code, then you get that message. If you have bought from me before, then you get this new price or this new email solicitation. Database, kind of data-driven digital marketing. But what I'm talking about now is the ability to do that for each of your customers, for each of your interactions in real time. And so that's a discontinuous evolution. That's not just more of the same, but working faster, harder. It requires a step change in our thinking as marketers, and importantly, a step change in the technology that we use to deliver that experience. And of course, I'm speaking about machine learning in that case. And so I hope as you're listening to this, I've got you thinking about this notion of predictions. I want you to be asking yourselves as a marketer, what is it in my business that if I could predict it with much more accuracy or fidelity, if I could make better predictions, that would unlock significant incremental business value for me. Maybe if you're in B2B, that's, well, who should my white glove in-person sales team call? Who's the right best prospect for them versus sort of inbound sales, inside sales, or email marketing. Maybe if you're in B2C, you say, well, I spent a lot of money on search advertising or display advertising with a 0.00 something percent click-through rate. If I could predict the right best display banner ad to put in front of each person at the right time, and I could even get that to a point tenth of something instead of a point thousandth of something click-through rate, boy, that would unlock incremental value for me. And in fact, these predictions can be used all along the customer decision journey for us as marketers. We could use machine learning to predict better customer insights, to predict product development, what might be the next hot flavor, what's the next matcha or sriracha. We could use data to predict that. Customer segmentation and targeting, we could use training data to predict. Of course, personalized advertising, I mentioned. Site personalization. When I land at the website, what should I see when I get there? The media that I buy, programmatic media buying depends on machine learning. Even customer service, things like chatbots, right? Knowing, queuing up for an agent, a live agent, or in a chatbot, what might be the question that I have and what might be the right answer, having that queued up and predicted might be a way to unlock value. To make it real, here's just one of many, many, many examples. I intentionally picked a small business, not a big business here, because I want you to just take away that any size business can take advantage of these tools and techniques, not just the Nikes or Budweisers of the world. This is a chain of 2,000 kind of convenience and gas station stores in the middle of the U.S. called Casey's stores, and they actually have become famous for the quality of their pizza. And so they have data on about 2.5 million rewards cards members. They collect that first person data on folks that in the 16 US states where they serve. They use that as input or training data, and they try to predict what's the right time to deliver an email solicitation, what's the right message, what's the right product, and what's the right offer to deliver to each of those individual members. Art Sebastian, who runs that digital experiences team at Casey, said, what our customers want is more relevance. They don't want to get the same thing as everyone else. They want relevant, personalized promotions that speak specifically to them in that moment. So in this case, they worked with Salesforce, who is their is their email vendor. They've got an AI tool called Einstein that does exactly this: predict right message, right time, right place, right recipient, right creative. And look at this. The conversion rates on those emails went up 16%. Well, okay, we don't take conversion rates to the bank. We take profits and sales and profits to the bank. But wouldn't you all love to have a 16% higher conversion rate on all those emails you sent? Of course you would. And it's not just Casey's stores that's reaping the benefits of this. This is some recent data from McKinsey, and I highlighted it over here on the lower right. You see, when applied to sales and marketing, you see that AI, machine learning in particular, is driving an average revenue increase in the high single digits or so for most firms. So Casey's is by no means an outlier or an edge case. Lots of firms are reaping these kinds of benefits. And why does it work? What is it actually doing? Well, it's enabling this modern marketing to scale, right? Managing this level of sophistication, of personalization, of real-time marketing exceeds cognitive human capacity or time. You can't do this by hand, off a spreadsheet, meeting every Friday in a conference room, making 5 decisions in an hour meeting as to what to show and send next week, right? You need some help. You need some machine learning in order to do that. But as exciting as it is, there's still a lot of upside for us as marketers. Only half of all marketers are doing anything like this of any significant means. 2 data points on this. The first on the left is from Advertiser Perceptions, did a survey that showed about 50% of all marketers are really doing anything related to AI or machine learning in their marketing toolkit. And on the right, from the Marketing AI Institute in their State of AI report earlier this year that they released, it showed half of all marketers classified themselves as total newbies, complete beginners when it comes to what do I know, how do I use machine learning and AI. That's okay if you're in that boat right now. As we like to say, it's not too late to still be early, and it's good that you're here watching this OfferFit virtual series, and hopefully this will inspire you to get started. Um, the flip side of it is I hope you're not in this other half of marketers who think it's just all hype and buzzwords that we can just kind of close our eyes and blink and ignore and hope it goes away. 47% of marketers think it's the most hyped buzzword. This is an actual headline from Forbes, right? That said, most overhyped word of the year, personalization, gone by 2025. Well, let's meet back here in 5 years and see, but I'll take the odds that it's not, and in fact, it's going to be even a bigger theme in marketing. So you might ask, well, okay, maybe we've got some hardcore people who we'll never convince, but for those who want to get started, why aren't they doing more of this? You might say it's lack of budget, lack of knowledge, lack of who owns this, organizational clarity. Should the CIO and CTO do this, or should marketing do this? Yeah, those are all barriers, but as this great survey from eMarketer showed, actually the number one barrier is lack of a clear plan. Marketers lack the ability to have a strategy on how to take advantage of all this great potential power and benefit from AI. And I see this in all my courses and my executive consulting projects as well. Over and over, marketers say, yeah, we're learning a little bit more about this. We're intrigued by what it'll do, but we really don't have a plan on how to implement it. And so that inspired my co-author, Dr. Raj Venkatesan, and I to take on that challenge and say, is there a way that together we can kind of uncover and offer to the marketing world, to the marketing community, a roadmap for how brands can get started? And so rather than trying to just invent that from scratch, we said, well, what if we went and talked to that 50% of brands who were already down the path? And let's ask them, what are you doing? What are you not doing? What are you doing that worked? What have you tried that didn't work that you wouldn't recommend to others? And so that's what we went about to do. We actually did that and said, hey, you're down this path already. How can you get started, or how would you recommend others get started? And as many marketers have told us, I can't do this because I have to go buy a machine learning company to get started. Look, Neiman Marcus just bought a company last week. I guess that's what it takes. No, that's not the right way to get started. And we heard that over and over from the great brands and marketers that we talked to. Many, in order to be truly, fully honest and share their wins and losses and victories and struggles and failures with us, asked to be anonymous. But these are some of the brands that were willing to sort of share their firsthand stories with us in our interviews and in the book. You'll recognize some bigger and some smaller companies here, some more traditional and some more digital companies here. But when we went out and talked to them, what we did was code all of their interview responses to try and see if we could identify some commonalities in what they were doing that worked and didn't. And sometimes this kind of research works really well, and sometimes it just is a big mess and there's no themes. But actually, in this case, there was a remarkably consistent pattern that emerged, that there were 5 sequential, we'll call them maturity levels or steps, that brands need to take to get from what we call machine learning zero to machine learning hero. How do you get from zero to hero? You got to follow these 5 steps, and we concretize them or memorialize them in the AI canvas. And so I'll go through each of these stages with a slide each here in a second briefly, but just to orient you on this, you read the canvas from the bottom up. So you start at the foundation or stage 1, then you go to experimentation, then up to expansion, and again, I'll unpack these, then to transformation, and lastly to monetization. But that's kind of the 5 levels. And by the way, spoiler alert, where companies have had sort of a tough time or a hard fail, it's because sometimes they try to just start at stage 3 or stage 5 without actually doing stage 1 or stage 2 first. So let's start there at stage 1 and show you what we mean by this with a company example or a brand example under each. Okay, so let's start with foundation. As we've already talked about, machines need training data in order to make these predictions. So in order to play this game, folks, you need some training data. You need some data about your customers, about who they are, about what they've bought, about recency, frequency, monetary value, about how they behave when they come to your website, Could be site analytics data, right? It could be loyalty program data. But you need some, ideally, first-party data. Now, by the way, outside our time today, subject for another webinar, I put a flag down on the bottom here that's very important. When you're collecting and using first-party data, just a friendly reminder that you need to follow all relevant legal, social, cultural, moral, ethical standards when you're dealing with customer data and privacy, and those vary depending on if you're dealing with minors or children, or if you're in EU versus if you're in California versus if you're in Evanston here where we are at Northwestern. So please keep an eye on that. We devoted a chapter in the book on that. But you got to have some data. Now, if you are in a business that captures first-party data, like, in the insurance business, you know the name, the email, the address, the payment credentials, the sales history of all your policyholders, congratulations, you already have some training data to work with. But what happens if you're not in that situation? If you're selling ice cream or hand cream or pasta, like these Unilever brands, Good Humor, Pond's, Vaseline, or Knorr. We love this example in Thailand. What the Unilever team did in order to gather some training data to be able to play this game. You know, the main social network there in Thailand is not Facebook, it's Line, Line. And the main sort of social currency online are these like achingly cute little emojis faces. So the Unilever team created sets of emojis for each of their brands, and in a opt-in clear value exchange said, hey customer, if you would like our cute little emojis for the Knorr pasta family, please tell us a little bit about your purchase history. Please tell us a little bit about yourself. And so in an open and honest email value exchange like that, Unilever now has first-party data on over 2/3 of all households in Thailand. Same in Vietnam, and they're expanding this program worldwide. So that enabled them to be able to play this game and feed machines into the algorithms first-party training data to start making predictions. So that's just one way. Either maybe you have it in-house, and if you don't, you have to be creative in a way to go get it, please, within all legal systems. Second stage, once you've got that foundational set of training data, now you want to start to experiment. And this is where I urge you to not go hire machine learning software engineers. Don't go acquire a company yet. Take some of that training data and go ask all of your existing partners and vendors. If you're working with Facebook, if you're working with Google, if you're working with Snapchat, they all have sort of machine learning optimized ways of delivering their media, for example. And so JPMorgan Chase, large bank in the US, said, wow, we're spending lots of money on display advertising with like really, really low click-through rates. Maybe we could ask the machine to make a prediction, to author what the headline and image in our display ad should be. They work with a company called Persado to do this. They fed their training data to Persado. Persado then machine authored the display advertising. And here's the outcome of that. In the pilot program, they saw a jump in the click-through rates of their display ads, jump by as much as, yes, 450%, right? Using the machine predictive creative, personalized, using the training data versus, let's hand write kind of 3 sets of banner ads, okay? Now again, I'll give you the disclaimer that we don't take click-through rate to the bank. We take revenue and profits to the bank. But boy, wouldn't we all like 4.5x higher click-through rates. So let all of your different marketing divisions, your acquisition marketing, your retention marketing, right, your search marketing team, ask their existing partners and vendors, what machine learning enabled options can we test and try? Here is where we strongly suggest that you have an AI marketing champion who kind of keeps track of all those experiments, logs them in a spreadsheet, looks at what is our improvement or gain, old way versus new way. And then at this point, you're ready to kind of try like a big bet that's internally led. You'll still need some outside help, but we want to start to say, all right, instead of just only relying on vendors and their technology, what could we lead in-house? Lots of examples in the book on this, but one that we loved was Coca-Cola. This actually came out of Japan. You're all familiar with this sort of freestyle vending machine. Maybe you've seen it at Five Guys or other restaurants. My kids love to go in and like put the blue Powerade and the orange Fanta and the grape and mix it all together. Um, and most of us just leave it at that. But what Coke did was they said, wow, if you want to save your drink formulation so that next time when you come back, you could dispense it again off a QR code. And by the way, be able to share that custom mix with all your friends, they created a little sign up program for that. Well, guess what? Now I got first party data. And we can understand that Sabrina likes fruitier drinks and Jim likes more cola flavored drinks, right? Or I buy on Mondays and Wednesdays and Sabrina buys on Tuesdays and Thursdays and she buys it with a hamburger and I buy it with a chicken sandwich and all those kinds of things, right? To be able to make great fidelity predictions moving forward. And that became the basis of a really transformational program for Coca-Cola in Japan that they're continuing to expand. So then at this point, you've got enough body of evidence that you can go to your CFO and say, look, we've run 50 experiments with our partners. We've done a couple of things self-funded in-house. We can show some old way versus new way or new way versus old way, step change improvements. Now you can do sort of a cost benefit CBA analysis to say, you know what, we're ready to go big or go home on this. And so at this point in the transformation stage, you can either build a system in-house or now maybe you might want to think about buying one. I'll give you a quick build and a quick buy. Starbucks is really a great example of this. They've built a system in-house on top of the Microsoft .NET environment that they call Deep Brew, a little play on deep learning and dark brew coffee. But this is where all of this brain and intelligence sits. In the US, some 60%, two-thirds of all transactions at Starbucks now happen through the Starbucks app. Payment credentials sit there. So, of course, that generates tons of training data. And all of the marketing activity, the messages, the offers that you see, the timing, the flavors that are recommended, all of that that gets pushed to each of us in our Starbucks app on our phone is personalized, real-time, and determined by machine learning. So they have completely now transitioned or transformed to be an ML first, ML led marketing organization. And in fact, by the way, this has allowed them to decrease the amount of money that they spend in mass media and mass advertising because this has proven so effective. Quick example as we wind up here. On the other side of things, John Deere, industrial B2B, said, you know what, rather than build something like that ourselves after having gone through stage 1, 2, and 3, we're actually going to make an acquisition. So several years ago, they bought the Blue River Group, which was a sort of a AI computer vision based company called Blue River Group out of Silicon Valley. They then embedded that within the John Deere organization. And now many of their products, including this one here called the Combine Advisor and See and Spray system, literally uses machine learning cameras on each of their combines that in real time looks at every leaf on every plant in the field and in real time determines the micro application amount of either pesticide or fertilizer that each leaf on each plant in each pass of each field requires, and it micro applies it. Obviously uses less fertilizer and pesticide, which is great for the planet and great for the rest of us, saves them money as well. So lots of benefits, a kind of a different approach, more on the product side of marketing than the advertising side of it. And then lastly, as you get so good at this, building it and developing a system like this for yourself, you might be able to get a little side hustle where you could now sort of monetize and sell it to somebody else. Example of this is the Washington Post that went through stages 1 through 4 and built a product called Heliograph, which was an intelligent agent, an ML-powered agent that allowed them in real time to create versions of stories that were unique to each reader and use real-time inputs like weather, sports scores, political events, votes happening in Congress in order to author these stories in real time so that as readers we get the right, best personalized Washington Post experience. Well, guess what? They got so good at this, they now license and sell this to the newspaper in Orange County and Des Moines Register and several others. One CMO explained this to us in our interviews like, imagine if you were Um, Learning gluten-free baking because maybe one of your kids was gluten intolerant. So you just out of necessity at home in your house start getting good at it. But then you get so good at it that you can like start selling it at bake sales and open up a bakery. Right? Initially it was for your own benefit, but now you can sell it as a monetized additional revenue stream. So just to wrap things up and put a bow on it, how do you get started? What's our advice in the book from the result of this project? What to go do Monday morning? Number one, appoint an internal AI marketing champion. Someone who can be the ringmaster to all of this, who can kind of do assessment, a state of the state, at what stage are you at now, who can manage all of these experiments, who can work cross-functionally with your CIO or your CTO, who can work with your external partners and vendors, who understand some project management, some data, as well as computer programming skills, and put a learning agenda in place for the team. Then do an assessment of where you stand. What level are you at on the canvas? What is the first experiment that you want to run with an external partner? Maybe it's A/B testing in order to optimize landing pages or website experience with OfferFit, right? Get some of those experiments up and running. Start by getting started. Try some experiments personally yourself. We love to encourage people to use Google's Teachable Machine, where it's a little predictor, the kids' game rock, paper, scissors, right? Well, you can play against the computer. You can actually build a predictive algorithm that will actually be very, very good at playing rock, paper, scissors or determining toy cars versus toy trucks, all of those kinds of things. But it's just a way of you as a marketer getting firsthand experience with what these AI systems do. You might want to use a company like Intersect Labs. And again, I'm not making any exact recommendations here, but this is a nice way where you can upload a CSV file and determine, what's my independent versus dependent variables, right? Y equals mx1, mx2, mx3 plus b, right? You load up all the x's and you say, what do I want it to predict? And in real time, it will fit the best ML model and come back to you, whether it's a forest and tree model or whatever kind of model, and say, here's a prediction that you can run with in pretty quick real time. RapidMiner is another tool that does this. So lots of tools out there. I encourage you to just dig in and get your hands dirty on that. And then last, great that you were here with us today, and I'll throw it back to Sabrina momentarily. Starting your learning journey, please continue your learning journey, whether it's with our book, The AI Marketing Canvas, or a book about how, from Raj Ramesh is a great book, AI and You, about how just for your career personal, you'll need to know this stuff. We love the courses at the AI Marketing Academy. Here's some of those. Microsoft and Google have great courses in machine learning that you can take and put a badge on your LinkedIn profile when you complete those. And we love this Coursera course. It's, I think, $59 or $79. But, what is AI? How do you get started building AI projects? How do you get it done within your firm? And what are some of those AI and society, privacy, legal, ethics issues? So, pick one, get started, invest in yourself. And so with that, Sabrina, I'll wish all of our viewers today good luck on their journey to start going down this path from levels 1 through 5 to capture the power of AI in marketing, and happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jim, for walking us through the process and advising folks on how to get started with AI for marketers.